Hello and welcome to the news on HOMEF TV. I am Kome Odomo. First, the highlights.
We can actually feed ourselves. We have the land. We have the resources to feed ourselves.
HOMEF fights for sustainable food justice and restoration. Building resilience through ecological justice. Kappa Water reports exposes failures of World Bank's privatization reforms in Nigeria. Now the news in details. A week-long School of Ecology session organized by Health of Moderates Foundation, HOMEF, focused on the theme, Ecological Justice and Resilience. This session aimed to strengthen participants and scholars in uncovering issues around biodiversity and the rights of nature. Discussions on environmental stewardship and governance brought to the forefront of the conversation. Participants were shown the harmful effects of GMOs and gene drives. The rights of nature, food safety, and other topics were discussed that urged participants to remember nature as their home. Our correspondent Onome Etisiro completes the report.
Activities from the school marked the beginning of an offshoot of leaders with a thirst for environmental justice and liberation. The School of Ecology discussion on ecological justice highlighted talks on environmental stewardship and governance, which brought the issue of false solutions to the forefront of the conversation, with justice for impacted communities being the way forward. Scholars discussed the reality of the deception embedded in multilateral systems and their links to the human rights struggles we face today. Various instigators charged scholars with the need to become environmental protectors while preserving their cultural beliefs.
We've consciously permitted pollution and contamination because we believe that nature will take care of itself. And so we dump waste into rivers, believing that the rivers will heal themselves. Sometimes we even believe that there's a certain pollution threshold that can be allowed. So you can be allowed to pollute up to this level and not more. You can be allowed to, you are required to pay when you pollute in what is called polluter pays principle. But all that is a way of permitting pollution and permitting harmful relationship in our environment. And we are saying it's time to rethink all this. We should only do those things that are beneficial, things that care about other lives, knowing that by doing so we're caring for ourselves. We shouldn't pollute our rivers, pollute our land, pollute the atmosphere, because when we do so, we are destroying and harming other beings that are not humans.
We live on an earth, and most times, like I told some people, do you know that when people were very spiritual, before the advent of all this, like, I don't care attitude, the rules in the villages, like that somebody was telling us this morning, if you go to don't pollute this water. If you do, there are consequences. People were more respectful, and now they feel that those things don't matter. Our spirituality is very, very critical, because we are one with the earth. It's not just something people think. It's not fetishness. If you think about, for instance, let's assume that all of us, there's a spring of water here, and all of us are going to drink this water. There's no other water in this earth. I'm sure all of us will do our best to protect this. It's because people feel they have alternatives, you don't care. Imagine this as the only source of water. And then you see me, in fact, by the time I'm crossing, somebody would say, hey, who goes there? They would literally, in fact, somebody would uproot me and throw me somewhere near Ikoba Zoo or somewhere close by.
To be in the field of a defender, you need to be motivated. It is a sacrifice. You need to choose. And the choice is difficult sometimes. So that's why it's always good for them to reflect on everything we have taught them. And also it's good for them to digest all those informations. It's not easy, but we believe that it's a good choice if they choose to be a defender.
Connect to our common struggles will help us foster unity, help us foster empathy, help us get strength, and help us to be more resilient. I am because you are. We are all relational beings. When the wind blows on the apple tree, or on the evelebo tree, or on the amulet tree, or the odara tree, what happens to the leaves? They move together, right? In different directions. You don't see that the wind is blowing and one leaf is going to the right and that is going to the left. They go together because that way they create balance for the tree. Likewise, humans, we are all relational beings. see those things moving around. I am because you are. And like Reverend said some days ago, that if you choose not to stand up for injustice or against injustice, you are valid. But remember, as you didn't stand for it, it might come and play towards you. Or if it doesn't play towards you, it might play towards me. And me being your friend or your brother or your sister, your struggle, your silence will impact on me. And invariably impact on you.
Reflecting on the event, scholars expressed renewed determination to advocate for environmental justice and community healing. They emphasized the importance of education, youth engagement, and media dissemination in promoting awareness and driving meaningful change. Participants also pledged to return to their communities to actively participate in the EIA while holding governments and corporations accountable for their roles in environmental degradation.
For me as a journalist, it has really given me cutting-edge ideas of what is actually taking place, not just in Nigeria, but in Africa generally. It has given me in-depth ideas of what colonialism has done to this region, more especially to the region where there's huge deposit of mineral resources. And the impacts, the environmental impacts, this has continually done on the people living in this area, more especially our underserved community in Nigeria. The fight is yet to commence. We still want to continue fighting to save our environment because this is the only thing we have. I want to say a wonderful thank you to HOMEF for this wonderful opportunity given to me.
The experience thus far has been wonderful, very inspirational, educating. It's given me a new way to really think about and understand the ecological situation in Nigeria and how that relates to some of like the broader issues that we're seeing with exploitation throughout the world, the global south, as well as the global north.
Scholars were shown the negative effects of GMOs and false solutions being paraded as real by imperialist corporations. And they were also enjoined to remember the earth as our home and treat her accordingly. This session of HOMEF School of Ecology marks the beginning of an offshoot of leaders with a thirst for environmental justice and liberation. Onome Etisiro for HOMEF TV.
Health of Moderates Foundation held an environmental monitoring training with eco-defenders to help protect the environment. The training was geared towards equipping participants with the knowledge of monitoring and reporting using minimal required equipments, following the recent steps by the federal government to resume oil and gas exploration in Ogoniland. This has left degraded territories damaged, with communities affected and livelihoods and cultural heritage lost. The training further emphasized the importance of taking environmental monitoring seriously, especially in critical times.
Creating awareness about environmental monitoring educates the public and alerts them to the potential consequences of inaction at a particular moment. Participants engaged in discussions about the impact of pollution on their communities and possible solutions, while also learning about indicators of environmental pollution. Participants were introduced to techniques for measuring pollution levels and were encouraged to use sustainable practices for environmental protection. Participants were charged with leveraging modern technology and innovative funding mechanisms, using cost-effective tools, and building inclusive community networks.
We want to be popular. We want to be known. We want to make people clap for us. But we don't do this work because we want to be clapped for. We do it because we are very passionate about the environment. And we know that the environment is our own beneficial, for our own beneficial growth. Hence, even if we are being praised, even if we are being given all the accolades, we should still be very humble. And that's why that's why most times I put this chain here. And you can see all of them are equal, even if they are in different colors. What that means is that they are from different tribes, different places, but they are all equal, no matter, even if you studied in Harvard. The idea is that you should be as discreet as possible. Not everybody should know that you are an environmental monitor.
While you were throwing out solutions, I didn't hear us talk about synergy building very strong bond among ourselves as monitors. Because for us growing up, monitoring the environment and working for the environment, we built a very strong bond. And that's why you saw Ken Tebe became my best man when I wedded. It was not by accident, that was my family. The only family that I know are those that are working with me. That bond helped us. If I want to go to any community and you have a friend, you call the friend, my friend is coming over, and that solves the problem.
Because we monitor, we're able to critique most of the things that High Prep is doing. Because we monitor, we're able to critique most of the things that NOSRA is doing. Because sometimes NOSRA can just tell you that, oh, we have done this or we are going to do this. But as monitors, it gives us the opportunity to critique and ask questions again. Why did NOSRA do this? Or why is High Prep using this approach? Why is High Prep doing this? Or why is NOSRA doing this? And again, what's this whole idea about doing a particular cleanup in a particular way and not doing it on the other way? Because that is what the type of strength that monitoring gives us.
Building trust in communities. How do you build trust when you don't have integrity? How do you convince the community person that I am here because of you people? I'm not here for myself. And that's why it was important that Ken Tebe asked the question, who are you monitoring for? Who are you monitoring for? Are you monitoring for yourself? Or are you monitoring for HOMEF? Or are you monitoring for XYZ? So we must be able to answer that question. Who are you monitoring for and why are we monitoring? If it's only because it affects you, then we may need to re-evaluate ourselves.
The defenders expressed determination to report spills while protecting the environment.
We as environmental monitors, when we come into a community or an environment and we approach them, because the way you present yourself and what you're coming for matters, is very important. Maybe you come and you begin to tell them you were sent by social organization, and then they begin to get that false impression that maybe you must have been given a lot of money and that you cannot just be doing this work for passion or for free. So you really have to open up to them and let them know what is at stake, what is on ground, and what needs to be achieved.
Community leaders has a role to play. If we can dialogue with community leaders before, we don't need to wait until oil spills occur before we have, meeting with critical stakeholders in those communities, because they are the ones, they have disciples. They can be here and said, what are you doing here? There are people that we need to work with, more especially these targeted communities like Bodo, communities like Goi, communities like Gyo, communities like Pogo, communities like Kurukuru, communities like Ogali. All these communities, there are critical stakeholders that we need to meet and discuss that. We have a team of monitors that whenever oil spills occur, they will visit your place.
This advocacy visit is very key, because when you talk with them, you relate well with them, they will own the process. Anytime you come, even if you are not there, they will say, that's the thing, when they come again, they will be the one to pave the way for you. So it is very important.
The defenders stated that community members must be given the right level of sensitization to understand that monitoring is for the benefit of both the environment and the community, as it will ensure stewardship and foster synergy between monitors and community leaders while encouraging community involvement. Stanley Egolo for HOMEF TV.
Over 30 journalists, community leaders, advocates, and storytellers gathered for a media community dialogue on renewable energy democracy, organized by Connected Advocacy, a group who aims to address one of Nigerians' most pressing needs, the transition to renewable energy, and how the media play a crucial role in advocating for a just transition in Nigeria's extractive sector reforms. This event provided a space for journalists to not only enhance their capacity to report on energy reforms, but to also engage community leaders and policymakers.
The event was designed to empower journalists and advocates to become champions of a just energy transition through compelling storytelling, and data-driven journalism. The significance of the media in transition lies in the fact that journalists have a responsibility not only to report on issues, but also to advocate for change that aligns with the needs of vulnerable communities. The convener, Israel Oreka, emphasized the importance of collaboration and knowledge sharing between media professionals and community leaders, with the ultimate goal of ensuring Nigerians' energy transition is inclusive and equitable for all, particularly the communities directly affected by fossil fuel and coal extraction. Toyin Yemoega, the chairman of the Nigeria Union of Journalists, Bayelsa chapter, during his remarks, highlighted the need for storytelling that will help drive the implementation of sustainable renewable energy at the community level, emphasizing the importance of nature-based solutions. He encouraged journalists to take up the task of developing stories that shed light on renewable energy as a just transition, ensuring environmental sustainability and improving the livelihood of impacted communities. Participants explored how journalists could amplify the voices of communities affected by fossil fuel extraction, ensuring that their stories are told with authenticity and respect. The group discussion focused on identifying solutions to overcoming challenges such as data access, community involvement, and resistance from industry stakeholders. One key takeaway from the discussion was the need for collaborative storytelling between journalists and communities, ensuring that the real experiences of those most impacted are at the core of the media narratives. Nina Bo for HOMEF TV.
Thank you, Nina, for that report. We'll go on a short break, and when we return, we'll go to Lagos, where CAPA is addressing water issues. Stay tuned.
Hello there, lovers of poetry. Health of Mother Earth Foundation presents her first Poetry Day for the year 2025. Join us for an inspiring session featuring the renowned Professor Tanure Ojaide, a master poet and storyteller, as he reads from his vast collections of profound and timely poems focused on ecological justice, among other issues. This session will undoubtedly capture the essence of our experiences of nature, of environmental justice, and the beauty of our world through poetic lens that will instigate ecological action. The date is Friday, the 25th of April, 2025. Venue, Ikike Garden, HOMEF, Ubo, Benin City at 10 a.m. prompt. For participation and registration, kindly visit all our social media platforms. Don't miss this chance to experience poetry from the master poet.
Welcome back, and do well to register for the upcoming Poetry Day organized by HOMEF. Visit the website and all of her social media handles to register for the upcoming event with Tanure Ojaide. Now to the reports. The latest report from Corporate Accountability and Public Participation Africa, CAPA, has exposed the failure of World Bank's water privatization reforms in Nigeria, which has left millions without reliable access to potable water. The report, titled Big Debts, Big Tests, a case study of World Bank-supported projects in Ekiti, Rivers, and Bauchi states, was presented in a media briefing. The report exposed the looming challenges and the lies of the World Bank proposition concerning water privatization rather than adopting homegrown approach to water governance. Esele Ojanelu files in the details.
CAPA's executive director, Akimbode Luwafemi, criticized the World Bank's approach to water governance. According to the report, the privatization model championed under the third National Urban Water Sector Reform Project has worsened water accessibility rather than improving it or delivering better water services. The report's findings indicate that water shortages persist despite multi-million-dollar investments with long-term loans. CAPA's findings suggest that, years after project completion, communities remain underserved and many residents still lack access to potable water.
Our research reveals that the water crisis confronting Nigeria and much of Africa cannot simply be attributed to environmental or demographic pressures alone, but also the predictable outcome of decades-long state withdrawal from public investment, coupled with the aggressive imposition of neoliberal policies falsely presented as pathway to development. The NUWRSP3 in Rivers State, designed to enhance water supply for the over 1.5 million residents in Obia local government of Port Harcourt, was initially envisioned to be a collaborative effort between the World Bank and the African Development Bank. However, ineffective coordination between the two financial institutions and procurement challenges led to severe delays in advancing the project and culminated in the World Bank ultimately withdrawing its support.
These conditions that we have found ourselves have been driven by the World Bank. The devaluation of the Naira, deregulation, removal of fuel subsidy have been prescriptions that have been handed down to people who call compradors because they continue implementing solutions that do not work for our people. One interesting point to make here is that for every time the World Bank has assessed, because like Sefa has said, this is a third leg of the program. The program has been implemented in first and second phase, and now a third phase that ended 5 years ago. And for the general rating of the program, it has always been moderately unsatisfactory. That means you did not learn anything, or there is something you are bent to achieve.
CAPA's report highlights that poor electricity infrastructure directly undermines water distribution, making privatization an ineffective solution to the state's water crisis. The report further examines Rivers State, where the third National Urban Water Sector Reform Project was intended to enhance the water supply for over 1.5 million residents in Obiakpo and Port Harcourt. However, poor coordination between the World Bank and the African Development Bank caused significant delays, ultimately leading to the World Bank's withdrawal from the project. Despite the project's failures, Nigeria remains responsible for repaying the foreign loans tied to them, further straining the nation's economy amid rising inflation and dwindling public funds.
Reform, which is what we have evaluated in this report, invested $250 million in several Nigerian states. They were in 3 legs. The first one, which was sector reforms and water supply investments. The second one, which was water sector governance, institutional strengthening, and human capital development. And the third, sector-wide improvement and project management at the federal level. The first leg of the program had Ekiti State receiving $50 million, Bauchi State receiving $65 million, and Rivers State receiving $80 million. How did the World Bank determine that these states should be part of the program? And the criteria that the World Bank used basically was one that was very commercial driven and not really interested in whether there was actually water running from the taps or not. Criteria like the existence of a water policy, which basically meant that, like Mr. Bode said, the state was mandated to change. That's why a lot of states have changed from water board to water corporation, to change it from being managed by the state to open it up to investment by the public sector.
What this report clearly exposes is the fact that we have an international imperialist conspiracy against this continent to ensure that this continent does not develop. And we have, conniving with that conspiracy, those we call elected leaders, the national bourgeoisie. But you have to ask yourself, this is year 2015. Do you realize that it was 2025, sorry. Do you realize that 110 years ago was when we had the first Iju Water Works? The Iju Water Works is the first water works in the whole of Nigeria, if not in the whole of West Africa. It was built, the building was started in 1901, and it was commissioned in 1915 by Lord Lugard. That's 110 years ago. And it had over 2-point-something million gallon capacity. The point I'm trying to make is that if 110 years ago, the question of public water supply had been taken so seriously in this country, to the extent that you had that kind of massive investment by the state, although the colonial state
at that time. And more than 10 years ago, somebody is now coming to tell us that the only way to provide water is through private investment, is through public-private partnership. Then we ought to say that this is nonsense.
Kappa insists that water should be treated as a fundamental human right rather than a commercial commodity. The 59-page report reveals how public taps in Nigeria once ran with water until the 1980s, when the World Bank and IMF started promoting the privatization of water. These privatization reforms, touted as a solution to Nigeria's debt crisis, have instead worsened the situation, deepened debt, and left taps without water. Esele Ojanelu for HOMEF TV.
Health of Moderates Foundation held a session of its Sustainability Academy with the theme Food Justice and Restoration. The lecture, delivered by the frontline environmental activist and executive director of HOMEF, Nimobasi, examined the use of GMOs and their implications for human rights, health, and the local economy, as well as the environment, while it unpacked the questions of why people are hungry. Our correspondent, Onome Etisoro, completes the report.
The concept of food justice entails ensuring sustainable access to nutritious food while addressing the structural, political, social, and economic barriers that contribute to high food inflation, climate change, and conflict, which in turn exacerbates rising malnutrition in Nigeria and across Africa. In his lecture, Dr. Bassi emphasized that the right to safe and healthy food is a fundamental right for both producers and consumers. He critiqued Nigeria's over-reliance on genetically modified crops, such as Tela maize, asserting that it directly undermines the rights of farmers to save, exchange, sell, or reuse seeds, which should ordinarily belong to them. With GMO seeds, their productivity tends to drop drastically after the first season, forcing farmers into a cycle of dependence on foreign seed companies.
There must be redistribution of power, give power back to the farmers. Let them control their seeds, let them share their seeds. GMO seeds, if you buy them and plant them, some people say it's not good. Some may not germinate, but many of them will germinate. But when you pick the fruit and replant the seed, you're going to get very poor harvest. So you have to go back to buy seeds every year. Imagine our farmers. Normally our mothers will hang corn over the fireplace. Have you seen that before? Or our grandmothers, great-grandmothers, for those who are very young. They will hang corn in the kitchen to plant it. Now, if you buy GMO corn and hang there, when you plant it, it will not give you up to half of the harvest from the original seed that you buy. So every year, the farmer will not be hanging seeds. You have to go and buy seeds. That is a recipe for poverty, and we don't want it.
It was emphasized that the restoration of food justice is a transformative process, a call to heal and reconnect communities with their land and heritage. The lecture advocated for a paradigm shift towards agroecological practices and regenerative agriculture, which prioritizes the preservation of indigenous seeds, the restoration of healthy soil, and the empowerment of smallholder farmers.
We can actually feed ourselves. We have the land. We have the resources to feed ourselves. If our farmers are protected and allowed to go back to their farms instead of being killed in their farms, if our farmers are supported with extension services, we will be able to produce food for ourselves.
As an agency of government, and I can tell you freely that for us in the extension department or the Ministry of Agric, we have extension officers that work for us, and they grow naturally grown foods. So the issue of importing GMO foods are not something that we are used to. Like I said before, despite we don't go into primary research, but research has also shown us that there could be aftermath of these things. And for us who work with farmers regularly, we don't want what you eat at the end will now be haunting you.
The academy was attended by members of the Faculty of Agriculture at the University of Benin, government representatives, students, and representatives from civil society organizations. The role of students, lecturers, civil society organizations, and farmers in challenging industrial agricultural narratives, building knowledge, and advocating for policy reforms was also emphasized. The academy thus highlighted the critical connections between food sovereignty, ecological sustainability, and social justice, while providing concrete action steps for participants to contribute to a more just and sustainable food system in Nigeria. Onome Etisiro for HOMEF TV.
You've been watching the news on HOMEF TV. Thank you for staying with us. I am Kome Odomo.